My boss pushed my chair at the Christmas dinner. That seat's for the investor. Get out. I fell to the floor in front of the whole team, but what he didn't know is that that very night I would change his life forever. When he woke up the next morning, I was already done pretending to respect him. It happened at our company's annual Christmas dinner, the kind of event that was supposed to feel like a celebration, but always ended up being a stage for my boss, Martin, to remind everyone who signed their paychecks. He loved that spotlight, the polished oak tables, the catered food, the fake laughter bouncing off the walls of that overpriced restaurant. We were all sitting down, plates half full, when he appeared with the so-called investor, a slick man in his 50s wearing a suit that looked more expensive than my car. I was in that seat because I had arrived early, because no one else ever did. Martin walked up, put his hand on my chair, smiled that PR smile of his, and said those words loud enough for every head to turn. "Hey, that seat's for the investor. Get out." Then he pushed the back of my chair with the side of his knee, not a shove, but enough to send it sliding back just as I stood. My balance went. The floor came up faster than I expected. The sound of my chair hitting the tile sliced through the room like a plate shattering. I heard someone gasp. Someone else laughed. I just stared at the ground, my palms open against the cold floor. I didn't say a word, didn't look up. I just stood, straightened my shirt, and stepped away as he clapped the investor on the back, saying, "Sorry about that. These tables get crowded fast." He didn't even look at me. I could feel everyone watching, the interns, the marketing team, even Hannah from HR, who mouthed, "Are you okay?" I nodded like it didn't matter, like my chest wasn't full of hot, heavy air that couldn't find its way out. I walked to the bar, ordered a soda, and stood near the corner pretending to check my phone. The rest of the night blurred. The fake toasts, the way Martin's voice filled every silence, the sound of forced laughter that followed his every joke. I kept thinking about the way he'd touched my chair, the casualness of it, like moving me out of his way was no different than pushing a stool. By the time the dinner ended, most people were drunk enough to forget it even happened. But not me. You don't forget humiliation. It burns a shape into you. Outside, the air was sharp and cold. I watched Martin step into a car with the investor. He didn't see me standing by the corner, hands in my pockets. I wasn't angry anymore, just clear. I walked home that night replaying every moment I'd bitten my tongue in meetings, every idea he'd taken credit for, every time he'd said, "That's why I make the big calls, and you just make the reports." I'd swallowed enough of that arrogance to fill a swimming pool. But that night, something changed. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a quiet, clean break in the part of me that still wanted his approval. When I got home, I opened my laptop. It wasn't revenge I was thinking about. Not exactly. It was truth. Facts. The things people like Martin assume no one else keeps track of. I had them all. Every inconsistency. Every expense that didn't line up. Every invoice rerouted through side accounts that shouldn't exist. I wasn't supposed to see those files. But when you're the one cleaning up the digital mess every quarter, you see everything. That night, I started organizing. Just facts. No commentary. Receipts, logs, screenshots. I saved them neatly in folders, each one named by month. Not to expose him, not yet. Just to be ready. At 2 a.m., I stopped, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled. My hands weren't shaking anymore. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't under him. Not in rank, not in fear. I didn't sleep much. I didn't need to. When he woke up the next morning, nursing a hangover and thinking about the applause he got from the investor, I was already sitting in my kitchen, coffee in hand, reading an email thread that would become the beginning of his end. It was from corporate compliance, a department no one ever noticed until it was too late. They were asking for department expense reports for the year, the ones Martin had streamlined, which meant manipulated. I smiled, closed my laptop, and took another sip of coffee. He'd never know it yet, but that seat he took from me last night, it had just cost him the table, But that was just the beginning. I didn't tell anyone what I had that morning. Not yet. You don't warn a man like Martin. You let him hear the echo after the fall. Monday came, and the office was all hangover and gossip. The Christmas dinner had already turned into a story. Half the people laughing about how poor Matt tripped over his chair, the other half pretending not to have seen it. That's how humiliation works. Everyone sees it, no one mentions it. Martin strolled in 2 hours late, reeking of last night's whiskey and false confidence. He made sure to pass by my desk. Slow, deliberate, that same grin stretched across his face. "Recovered from your little fall, champ?" he said loud enough for the sales team to hear. A couple of them chuckled nervously. I looked up from my monitor. "Yeah," I said evenly. "You?" That wiped his smile just a little. He wasn't used to being met halfway. Martin was the kind of boss who fed off submission. The type who only felt tall when someone else looked small. He tapped my desk once, as if to mark territory, and walked off toward his glass-walled office. I could see him through the reflection, already on the phone, already laughing too loud. The rest of the day moved in slow motion. My inbox was quiet, my mind wasn't. I kept thinking about that email from compliance, about how poetic it was that it landed exactly when it did. After lunch, HR sent a memo, quarterly reports due by Friday. Martin had been delaying them for months. His streamlined process meant fewer questions, fewer eyes. But corporate was finally asking for everything, and that meant I'd be the one doing the actual compiling. Around 4, he called me in. "Matt, close the door." He gestured toward the chair across from him. Not the one he pushed me out of last week, but close enough. "So," he started, swirling a pen in his hand, "the suits upstairs want our expense breakdown again. We'll give them the usual summary." "Summary?" I repeated. "Yeah," he said casually. "The cleaned-up one. You know the drill." I did. It meant deleting half the transactions, rounding down anything that didn't fit his narrative, and pretending a few client dinners weren't held in exclusive bars with no clients present. "I'll handle it," I said quietly. He smirked, leaning back. "That's my guy. You keep things simple." Simple. Right. That night, I stayed later than anyone. When the office went silent and the city lights flickered through the blinds, I started pulling the real numbers, the ones Martin didn't want anyone to see. The unedited, unfiltered truth. Each entry was like a heartbeat, each line a reminder of just how deep he'd gone. Misused company funds, fake consulting invoices, kickbacks from vendors he'd personally vetted. It was all there, time-stamped, traceable, undeniable. I didn't add commentary. I didn't write explanations, just evidence. Pure, clean, quiet. By 10 p.m., the report was done. 2 copies. One on the shared drive, marked summary, and one private, encrypted, dated, and ready. As I shut down my computer, I saw my reflection in the dark monitor. I didn't look angry. I looked calm. That scared me a little, how calm I'd become. The next morning, Martin called a meeting. "Team," he began, his voice slick as ever. "Big year ahead, big money on the line. Investors impressed with our numbers." Investor. There it was again. The word he used like a crown. He paced in front of us, spinning phrases about growth, bonuses, our vision. When he passed by my chair, his hand brushed the back of it. Deliberate. Like he owned it. Like he still owned me. "Matt," he said suddenly, "you'll handle the final expense upload, yeah?" "Sure," I said. "Already on it." "Good man. Good man." I almost laughed. At lunch, I sat in the cafeteria corner, the same spot I always took. My coworkers chatted about gifts, vacations, bonuses. No one mentioned the dinner. No one ever would. But they'd all seen. Every single one of them. When I looked up, I caught Hannah from HR glancing at me. Not pity, not curiosity. Something else. Awareness, like she knew. She walked over, sat down. "Rough night at the dinner, huh?" she said softly. I exhaled. "Yeah, happens." Her eyes narrowed a little. It shouldn't. I didn't respond. She took a sip of her coffee. Corporate's been sniffing around Martin's numbers. You didn't hear that from me. I didn't, I said. When she stood to leave, she added, if they ask for full transparency, don't clean up anything. Send what's real. Trust me. That sentence stayed with me the rest of the day. By Wednesday morning, the air in the office had changed. Martin was quieter. He'd been on 3 private calls before noon, each one shorter than the last. At 3:15, I got an email from Compliance Department subject. Expense audit. Full records request. Body. Please submit all unedited data files for review. Do not summarize. Do not consolidate. Direct upload by Friday 10 a.m. No summaries. No spin. I stared at that email, feeling something shift. He had pushed me out of a chair in front of the entire team. Now I was about to pull the floor from under his feet, quietly, legally, and without a word. When the office emptied out that night, I stayed again. The hum of the HVAC system was the only sound as I finalized the upload, attached every file, and hovered over the send button. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like gravity, something that was always meant to happen, finally catching up. I clicked send, and then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. The silence didn't last long. By Friday, the air in the office had weight, a strange kind of heaviness that made every word sound too loud. People whispered without knowing why. Phones rang less. Doors closed faster. Martin's door especially. He'd been pacing behind that glass wall since morning, jaw tight, eyes darting from his phone to the hallway, like he was waiting for a call that never came. At 9:42 a.m., it did. His desk phone lit up red. He stared at it for a second, then picked it up. The way his expression changed told me everything, from irritation to confusion, and then that flicker of something colder, fear. He pulled his office blinds shut after that. By noon, the visitors arrived, 2 men and a woman in black coats, badges on lanyards, briefcases that looked heavier than they should have been, corporate compliance, full force. "Morning," one of them said to the receptionist. "We're here to see Mr. Turner." That was Martin. Everyone watched as they walked past the cubicles. The woman glanced at me once, not random, measured, like she already knew my name. When their footsteps faded behind his door, the whispering began. "What's going on? Is that corporate?" "Yeah, from HQ, something about the reports." I didn't answer anyone. I just kept typing. An hour later, Martin called me in. His smile was stretched too tight, the kind of smile that fights to hold shape. "Matt, hey," he said, voice sugar-coated. "Could you give us the raw data sets again? Looks like there's been a mix-up." "Sure," I said. "Which version do you need?" His nostrils flared, almost imperceptibly. "You know which one? The summary?" I asked. He hesitated. "Yeah, the one we sent." I nodded. "Already sent the unedited version to compliance this morning, per their request." For a second he didn't blink. Then he laughed. Too fast, too loud. Right, all good. Thanks, Matt. You're thorough as always." He waved me off with his fake calm hand. I closed the door gently behind me. By 3 p.m., the blinds stayed shut for good. The compliance officers didn't leave. Around 4:30, one of them came out, the woman, holding a stack of printed spreadsheets. She didn't look at anyone, but her jaw was set. 15 minutes later, Martin walked out. No jacket, no briefcase, just pale. He didn't say a word, not to me, not to anyone. He walked straight through the lobby, out the front doors, and into the cold December light. Nobody clapped. Nobody said a thing. But the air, it shifted again. Relief and curiosity tangled in the same breath. By Monday, the memo went out. Subject: interim management appointment, effective. Immediately, body: as part of an internal review, Mr. Turner will be taking an extended leave of absence. Day-to-day operations will be temporarily overseen by Matthew Reed, operations analyst. My phone buzzed nonstop for an hour. Congrats. What happened? Did you know? I didn't respond to any of them. At 11 a.m., the head of compliance called me directly. Mr. Reed, she said, your cooperation with last week's audit helped us resolve something that could have been catastrophic. Thank you for your diligence. Her tone wasn't polite. It was professional. Precise. The kind of tone reserved for someone who just closed a hole in a sinking ship. Just doing my job, I said. And I meant it. But the truth? It wasn't satisfaction I felt. Not pride. It was quiet. Deep, clean, quiet. The kind that follows a storm that lasted too long. That afternoon, I walked past Martin's office. His nameplate was already gone. The blinds were open now, sunlight cutting across the empty desk. I stood there for a moment, remembering that night. That push, that humiliation frozen in 100 sideways glances. It felt distant, like a story that used to be mine but wasn't anymore. I spent the next few weeks doing what I always did, building order out of chaos. Numbers, systems, clarity, but the whispers didn't stop. People were careful around me now, respectful, almost nervous. I didn't correct them. One day in the elevator, Hannah turned to me and said quietly, "You didn't say a word, and yet everything changed." I smiled. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer. She nodded like she understood more than I said. That Friday, compliance sent a final report to the regional office. It was confidential, but one of the directors forwarded me the closing line. Primary cause of discrepancy traced to unauthorized expense manipulations by former regional manager. Internal correction completed. No disciplinary action required for remaining staff. Former. That word hit harder than I expected. When I left the office that evening, the air was cold again. The same kind of cold as that Christmas dinner. Same city, same season, different man. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't plan revenge. All I did was tell the truth to the right people at the right time. And that night, as I locked my apartment door and sat down with a drink, I realized something simple. That night at the dinner, I stopped being the quiet one. 3 months later, the company didn't look the same. The posters with Martin's leadership quotes were gone from the halls. The constant tension that lived between meetings had lifted. People actually smiled when they walked into work, not because everything was perfect, but because the storm was over. I didn't take his office. That's what everyone expected me to do, but I didn't want it. The glass walls, the polished desk, they still smelled like arrogance. Instead, I moved into a smaller one across the hall. Same chair I'd had for years. Different view. The promotion came quietly, through an HR email. Operations lead, the title said. No speech, no party, no dinner. Just a new badge and a little more weight on my shoulders. The kind I didn't mind carrying. The first meeting I ran as lead was silent at first. People didn't know how to act. They'd spent years watching Martin talk over them, cut them down, turn every question into a test of loyalty. So I started with something simple. All right, I said, let's talk like humans. No ranking, no filters. What's broken and how do we fix it? For a second, no one moved. Then Hannah spoke up. Then Ben. Then others. Within minutes, the room sounded alive. Messy, honest, real. It felt like breathing after years underwater. After that, the work got better. Not easier, just better. Cleaner. People trusted again. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the glass and remember that night. The look on Martin's face when he realized control had slipped through his fingers. I didn't hate him. I didn't pity him either. I just understood him now. The hunger to feel important can eat a person alive. He called once, months later. Blocked number, but I recognized his voice before he said my name. Matt, he started, hesitant. I heard you're running the team now. Just keeping it together, I said. He exhaled slowly. I didn't mean for that dinner to... Don't, I cut in. You did. You always meant it. There was a pause, the kind that stretches between two people who'll never see the world the same way again. He finally said, "You got what you wanted." I looked around my quiet office, the files neatly stacked, the hum of computers, the sound of real work happening just outside my door. "No," I said, "I got what I earned." And then I hung up. That night, I stayed late. The office was empty, the lights dim. I walked past the conference table, the one Martin used to dominate like a stage, and stopped beside it. I placed my hand on the back of one of the chairs. It wasn't the same one from the dinner, but it felt symbolic. I could still see that moment. Me on the floor, the laughter, the silence afterwards. It felt like another lifetime. Now I was the one setting places at the table, not moving people, not pushing them away, just making room. Outside, snow was falling against the windows. I watched it for a while before shutting off the lights. When I got home, I poured a drink, sat by the window, and listened to the quiet hum of the city. The kind of peace that doesn't ask for applause. He used to own the room. Now he can't even look me in the eye, and I don't need him to, because sometimes the best revenge isn't watching someone fall. It's standing where they once stood, calm, steady, untouchable, and realizing you never needed to push back. You just needed to stop giving them your seat.